Let's discuss all of this now with MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, former Caracas bureau chief for the New York Times, William Newman. He's the author of Things Are Never So Bad That They Can't Get Worse Inside the Collapse of Venezuela. Also with us, foreign policy editor-in-chief Ravi Agrawal and our legal analyst, former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Vaughn, President Trump and his top officials have given a series of interviews in the face of serious Venezuela questions. Did they offer any specifics on the objective and how exactly the U.S. plans to just, quote, run another country?
Anna, the new notable remarks are coming from Stephen Miller, who appeared last night on CNN. And he is somebody, along with Secretary Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, the president has suggested are effectively a part of the team who are in charge of running Venezuela. What has been put into place is an effective quarantine, to use Marco Rubio's words, and a naval blockade in which the U.S. is effectively seeking to stop the exporting of sanctioned oil outside of Venezuela, to put a belt on the country to effectively force its hand to cooperate with the United States and potentially American oil companies. I want to let you listen directly to some of Stephen Miller's remarks.
By definition, we are in charge because we have the United States military stationed outside the country. This is sort of foundational. The United States is using its military to secure our interests unapologetically. The assault force that captured Maduro is one of the greatest strategic shifts, rebalancing of power and military victories that have happened in the history of our country.
Now, notably, Stephen Miller was also asked very directly of whether they were seeking to have new elections in Venezuela overseen by its now president, Delcy Rodriguez. Stephen Miller repeatedly sidestepped directly answering the question as to what the United States has demanded of the existing Maduro regime that remains in place. Now, notably also, our own colleague Joe Scarborough had a phone conversation with President Trump here over the last hours, in which President Trump, when asked by Joe very specifically how this is different than the U.S. efforts in the early 2000s to secure oil in the Middle East, President Trump, according to Joe, saying that unlike in Iraq, that the United States intends to, quote, keep the oil out of Venezuela. Anna.
William, we can't forget what happened there in Iraq. The Bush administration said the U.S. would be greeted as liberators in Iraq, arguing it would be quick, and he installed loyalists to carry out that transition. Now you have President Trump saying the U.S. will run things in Venezuela and the oil companies will do the heavy lifting there. But, William, reestablishing oil infrastructure is one thing. Stabilizing the country is another. What do you see as the potential pitfalls in this situation?
Well, it's a very odd situation because the U.S. has no troops there. So what seems to be going on, at least at this point, is their intention is to pressure the what's left of the Maduro government, which is essentially all of it except Maduro and his wife, to do what they want. Eventually, it seems like their idea is that U.S. oil companies will move in and start operating wells and rebuilding refineries. But that's going to take a tremendous amount of security. And where's that security going to come from? It would seem that that would require U.S. troops to be present. A tremendous amount of uncertainty. People I talk to, I'm in New York, but I talk to people constantly in Caracas and elsewhere in Venezuela. There's an immense amount of tension. There's an emergency decree in effect since Maduro was taken away. It makes it illegal for people to express support for the U.S. actions. It means that people could be arrested for protesting. Yesterday, a bunch of journalists were arrested and then later released. There were shots being fired in different parts of the Capitol last night. People are afraid. They don't know what's happening. So a tremendous amount of confusion and uncertainty. We know that at least 80, according to the Venezuelan government, 80 people were killed, most of them soldiers in the U.S. attack. But there were also several civilians who were killed. A missile hit an apartment building. A woman living next to a communications antenna that was taken out was killed by debris. That's the situation as it stands now. But going forward, it's very hard to see how the U.S. runs the country, as they say, without having a presence there.
Yeah, you describe chaos and fear and instability, frankly. Ravi, we know Venezuela has the largest known oil reserves in the world, but right now it's producing only a fraction of it. Why is that? And do U.S. oil companies trust the situation is safe enough and the future stable enough to make these massive investments that Trump wants?
The answer is no. And, you framed it very well. Just to put some numbers on that, Venezuela has some 20% of the world's oil reserves. It only produces 1% of the world's oil, which is less than about 1 million barrels a day. Now, in the 70s, when it was producing 3.5 million barrels a day, that was sort of the halcyon days of Venezuela's oil production. Since then, what it has done, it has allowed all of its infrastructure to go waste. It's ruined it. It has allowed a generation of experts in the field. It's basically chased them out. So brain drain, resource drain, and bringing all of that back, it takes the stability that Will was just talking about, the security. It also takes tens of billions of dollars of investment to bring all of that back. The infrastructure, the human capital, and then also the market conditions. We shouldn't forget that the global price of oil right now is $60 a barrel. It's under that, in fact. To convince major oil companies that you want to drill for more oil, you need higher prices because you need to be able to say that this is going to be profitable down the line. And then there's also the fact that Venezuelan crude is very difficult to extract. It is dirty. It is what is known as heavy crude. It requires a lot of extra refining. You need to also import diluents to get it to where you need to get it to. It is incredibly complicated. And in a sense, it is nowhere near as easy as Trump is saying it will be. US companies don't want to do it. And what Trump is really betting on is the past. The oil markets of the 70s and 80s, while the likes of China are focused on the future, clean energy.
Yeah, and you just laid out very well how complicated this is. Trump is saying he thinks it could be, about an 18-month endeavor, maybe less than that, to get all of the oil production up and running at sort of full tilt. Is that a realistic timeline?
No, it's not. Quite simply, from an infrastructure perspective, to get all of these oil fields back up and running, oil experts I've been speaking to say that, even in the best case scenario, you have all the money, you still have a security situation where it's very uncertain how you do that. And of course, companies don't really want to do that. But then, to that, you add again, what is the market incentive here to try and do that? And, the oil companies themselves aren't looking at Venezuela. Oil is at less than 60 a barrel. These are not the market conditions even of Iraq 20 years ago, when it might have made sense to do what Trump is saying. Those days are gone.
Yeah. Paul, I just want to know, as I come to you, we are monitoring what's happening at the Kennedy Center because we expect the president to address House Republicans who are holding a retreat there this morning. We'll see if the president says anything specific to the Venezuela situation. Looks like he's just greeting them now. We will be listening closely and pop in if he makes newsworthy remarks. I do want to highlight what he told NBC about his discussion with these oil companies before this takeover. He was asked if the administration had briefed any oil companies ahead of Saturday's military operation, and President Trump said, no, but we've been talking to the concept of what if we did it? The oil companies were absolutely aware that we were thinking about doing something, but we didn't tell them we were going to do it. Paul, does that raise any legal or ethical red flags, especially if he's giving oil companies a possible heads up, but not Congress?
Yeah, so it certainly explains why Mr. Maduro yesterday described himself as a hostage and a prisoner of war. That was a strategic move to get the court to focus on how Maduro is not an ordinary criminal defendant, and this is not an ordinary criminal case. So the defense has signaled they will try to get the prosecution dismissed based on how Mr. Maduro was brought to the United States through a military operation. The UN Charter forbids the use of force on a sovereign nation unless that country consents, or it's for self-defense, or it's authorized by the UN Security Council. The Trump administration is saying that the purpose of the military operation was to extradite Mr. Maduro for trial in the United States. But that's not an exception that's recognized by the UN. Extraditions happen all the time, but the other country has to consent. And Ana, if the only purpose of the military operation was to bring Mr. Maduro to the United States, the defense is asking, why is the president now saying that the U.S. will run Venezuela?
Yeah, and we did see from Maduro a slight look at maybe a defense when he talked about being kidnapped and being a prisoner of war. Paul, are there any limitations in terms of how the U.S. goes about trying a foreign leader in U.S. courts?
So the judge will focus on whether there's jurisdiction for Mr. Maduro to be tried in his court, the Southern District of New York. Under the law, when people commit crimes outside the United States that impact the homeland, they can't be tried in federal court. So the judge probably won't focus on the circumstances under which Mr. Maduro landed in the courtroom. So the bottom line there, even if the U.S. violated international law when it extradited Mr. Maduro, that's an issue for the UN and Congress. It's not an issue for Mr. Maduro at his trial. He will, though, use his status, he says, as the head of state to get immunity. Under international law, heads of state have immunity from arrest or prosecution in a foreign nation. The legal issue is whether Mr. Maduro should be considered the head of state. Since 2019, U.S. government under both Trump and Biden has now recognized him as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. But Ana, the Supreme Court has stated it's the president's prerogative to recognize foreign governments. So the judge may feel like he's bound by Trump's determination that Mr. Maduro is not actually the leader of Venezuela.